It's the largest low-rise office building on Earth, a place so vast it has its own zip code, its own police force, and until recently, its own internal subway stop. The Pentagon holds more floor space than the Empire State Building, yet it's only 5 stories tall. Designed in a matter of days and built in just 16 months. It was constructed so fast during World War II that workers literally poured concrete around the clock, using sand dredged from the nearby Potomac River. Its 5 rings and endless corridors stretch more than 17 miles, long enough that, according to some sources, workers use bicycles to get around, passing by offices that, some say, have no known occupants. Below ground, there's a sealed-off tunnel that once served as a drop-off for taxis, but is now bricked up and forgotten. Deep within the Pentagon's core is a war room that operates 24/7, shielded by layers of clearance, walls, and strict classification. Officially, this building allows public tours, but they don't go anywhere near the action. You'll see a gift shop, a few hallways, and maybe a memorial, which is why it's come to be known as the tour that shows you nothing. So what exactly goes on behind those 5 sides, and how is it possible that the Pentagon, arguably the most recognized government building in the world, completely closed off to the public? Stay tuned to find out, as we uncover why the Pentagon is totally forbidden. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Let's go back to a time before the Pentagon even existed, when the U.S. military had no central headquarters and was just a patchwork of cramped, scattered offices across Washington, D.C. In its origins, the War Department was spread over 17 separate buildings, including the Munitions Building and the main Navy Building along Constitution Avenue. These were makeshift, temporary structures originally thrown up during World War I. So, on the dawn of World War II, the military command structure was physically fragmented and bureaucratically choked. Files were misplaced, communications lagged, and senior officials lost time moving from building to building by foot or cab. And it would be fair to point out, that kind of disorganization might sound like a security relic of the past, but it might even be more relevant today than you would suspect, especially when it comes to your own personal information. Let me explain. Try this. Google yourself. Notice how much of your data is out there? You might be shocked at how easy anyone can find everything out about you in just seconds. That's right. Your personal data, your name, address, phone number, and more is all for sale. And the worst part? This is a billion-dollar industry. In fact, it was recently discovered that data broker databases were even selling information on U.S. military personnel. So, if even those high-level security measures aren't safe, then what does that mean for the rest of us? Well, fortunately, there's a way to protect yourself. That's where Delete Me comes in. I use it personally and recommend it because it works. It removes your information from hundreds of databases where it shouldn't be. And it's not just a one-time fix. Delete Me continuously monitors to ensure your data doesn't resurface. When you sign up, Delete Me scans data broker sites and gives you a detailed report on where your information is exposed. They then remove it and track it to ensure that it stays gone. I tried it myself, and it was shocking to see just how many sites had my personal information without my knowledge. But after I used Delete Me, in just days, all of that unauthorized data was wiped from multiple databases. So don't let your personal information keep getting sold without your consent. Take control today. Use my code SOCASH or click the link in the description for 20% off Delete Me. Go to joindeleteme.com/SOCASH, activate your plan, and reclaim your privacy. Don't wait until someone else misuses your data. Protect yourself now. Online privacy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Every day you go without protecting your information is another day that anyone can access it. So thank you, Delete Me, for sponsoring this video and helping more people take back control over their data. But now, back to our story. So, it was unacceptable to have a situation where classified security documents and important officials alike crisscrossed D.C. in such a reckless manner. By all counts, the urgency for a solution reached its peak in July of 1941 when President Roosevelt authorized the construction of a new headquarters. Something permanent, massive, and unified. But the chosen site wasn't exactly prime real estate. The Pentagon would rise on the former grounds of Arlington Farms, a patch of swampy, mosquito-infested land across the river from D.C. The site also included portions of Hell's Bottom, a semi-rural area that had once been home to black families and a post-Civil War shantytown. Buildings on that land, including barracks, housing, and even part of a woman's dormitory complex, were demolished or relocated. In their place, one of the most ambitious building projects in American history took shape. The design had to be fast and efficient, hence the job was given to architect George Bernstrom and engineer John McShane. Bernstrom drafted the plans in just 1 week. The five-sided layout wasn't symbolic, it was practical, designed to fit the irregular plot of land selected initially near Arlington Cemetery. Though the plot later changed, yet the plan stuck. What resulted was a five-sided, five-story structure with concrete rings and 10 radial corridors. The building would house over 25,000 employees and stretch more than 17.5 miles in terms of hallways. Construction began on September the 11th, 1941, exactly 60 years before it would be attacked. It took just 16 months to complete. Materials were sourced locally, sands from the Potomac River and steel from nearby mills. Concrete was poured day and night under floodlights. At its peak, the site employed over 13,000 workers. The speed was astonishing, but so was the control. Workers were issued access badges, and construction details were compartmentalized. From the beginning, this wasn't just a building, it was a command center, and its layout reflected that. Once completed, the Pentagon wasn't just functional, it was impenetrable. There were 10 entrances, but each was heavily monitored. Internally, its design made it easy to secure, but difficult to navigate. Classified areas were built deep within the rings, away from windows and access points alike. Offices were grouped by clearance level, and over time, sensitive functions like the National Military Command Center were also added, deepening the building's role as not just a workplace, but a nerve center of military secrecy. Indeed, it began as a fix to organizational chaos, but by design, culture, and sheer scale, the Pentagon quickly became something more. A structure meant to be entered only by those with reason and forgotten by those without. What the public can see inside the Pentagon is tightly curated. Visitors enter through a dedicated access point, pass security, and follow a fixed route. You'll be shown the Hall of Heroes, a corridor of service emblems, and maybe a stop at the gift shop, but that path is narrow by design, and it leads nowhere near the room where the actual power is. The deeper levels of the building aren't on the tour, and most people working there haven't seen them either. According to Stars and Stripes, staff are typically restricted to one ring or corridor. Few have reason or permission to navigate beyond their assigned area. Doors are labeled by code, not department. The command structure is physical. If you don't have clearance, you won't be allowed to proceed. As for the most critical areas, like the National Military Command Center, the Pentagon's 24-hour nerve center, well, those are shielded behind multiple checkpoints and layers of classification. Now, the transit access has changed too. The Pentagon Metro Station, opened in 1977, was once linked directly to the internal corridors. That access was severed after 9/11. Today, the station opens into a controlled outdoor zone. Furthermore, the Waldorf Tunnel, once used for direct vehicle access beneath the Pentagon, was sealed off sometime in the 1990s. It was never repurposed, and there's no real sign marking where it used to be. It's just gone. We should also point out that no complete map of the building's interior has ever been made public. A few diagrams do exist that show the outer structure, rings, corridors, and access points, but they leave out entire sectors. Though in 1971, a different kind of map did emerge, when thousands of classified pages leaked to the press, revealing how the Pentagon worked. And let's just say the public was not exactly pleased with what they found out. In June of 1971, the New York Times published the first installment of a secret government report that was never meant to leave the Pentagon. Daniel Ellsberg, a former military analyst with access to internal archives, had illegally copied these documents. What he took amounted to over 7,000 pages of classified material. Together, they became known as the Pentagon Papers. These papers were certainly never intended for public view. Rather, they were an internal study ordered by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, resulting in an extensive review of U.S. involvement in Vietnam from 1945 to 1967. These files were only meant to be a record, and they became a national reckoning. The documents revealed that successive administrations, from Truman to Johnson, had escalated military involvement in Vietnam while privately doubting that the war could ever be won. Key decisions were made in closed rooms. Troop deployments were increased based on political optics, and perhaps worst of all, is that military reports were rewritten before being shared with Congress. According to the Times, the report showed, quote, a systematic pattern of deception, meaning this wasn't a single incident. It was a structure, and perhaps at least part of the reason that the building is so totally off limits. The most damning discovery wasn't just what the government had done, but where those decisions had been made inside of the Pentagon. Not as battlefield strategy, but as information management. The Pentagon Papers suggested that messaging, forecasting, and public perception were controlled alongside military logistics. So, at this point in history, what the Pentagon had become, in part, was an engine for narrative, one that moved through cleared channels far from public view. The White House tried to block the publication, and so the case went to the Supreme Court, which surprisingly ruled in favor of the press. And with that, for the first time, Americans understood that, to some degree, the security inside of the Pentagon wasn't just operational, but it was also political. In closing, I'd like to further address the Pentagon's shape, which most believe wasn't symbolic. Indeed, it was situational, as the original plot considered near Arlington Cemetery required a five-sided structure to fit between existing roads. And yet, the five-sided geometry turned out to serve the building's real function better than anyone realized. Symmetrical, enclosed, and defensible. No angles wasted. No corners are unaccounted for. It was built for movement on the inside and control from the outside. This isn't a new idea. In fact, in medieval and Renaissance Europe, fortresses were often designed using five-point geometries, which you might also remember from some of our on-location episodes. Star forts, in particular, were engineered with overlapping lines of sight, basically built to withstand cannon fire. But here's the difference. Unlike those previous landmarks, we basically know nothing about what goes on inside the Pentagon. And in my opinion, that makes it one of the most forbidden places in America. We'll leave it there for today, but I thank you all so much for watching. Hope you'll support the channel by hitting subscribe, and until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.